Hello, everybody. This is the Wednesday, June 26th Jupyter Frontends weekly meeting. I'm your host, Eric Gentry. We have some items on the agenda today. To anybody new, welcome. Please feel free to listen in or to discuss or bring up your own items if you'd like. We're all here to help and support people in the Jupyter community. So first on the agenda is Jason.
Hey everyone, just a quick plug. I have a pull request that's open that could use your feedback. And I noticed it's also tagged for version 4.3.0, and this moves the filter for the file browser out of the toolbar in the file browser and makes it show up when you click on a filter button. So if you could take a look at that, excuse me, I'd appreciate it. Got some feedback from Mike and Jeremy and made some revisions on that.
Okay, so the first news is that JupyterLab 4.2.3 has been released. That's a small bugfix release. There are some documentation updates as well that I wanted to get out. I think there isn't anything for relating to Conda Forge, but this just reminds me that there is a pull request which would have changed that. So there is for the next point release, we will need to bump the dependencies for the, not cookie getter, but the template. But for this one, there isn't anything to note. And my next point is to ask and discuss the JupyterLab 4.3 release timeline, and we are at the end of June. 4.2 was released at 3rd of May, so that was already 2 months ago. And in the past, it was not unusual for the releases to happen in 3 to 4 months time. Last time when we discussed that, there was some feedback that it's too quick and too slow down. I personally didn't feel that way because I think that these are all backwards compatible things, and if there are any breakages, we should work at improving the process so that we do not release anything which is breaking. Yeah, any thoughts, any initial suggestions, or should we propose a date and work backwards? So we will need at least 1 month for beta testing, and usually at least 2 weeks for the RC phase. So that's already 1.5 months from today. And we are not ready to enter beta because major features which are proposed are yet to be reviewed. So this gives us about 2 months from today, I think. What do people think about the end of August?
I think it's a bit optimistic given that in the summer months, especially a lot of our collaborators from Europe are not going to be available. So we may have periods where people are harder to reach. But I think realistically, like late August, mid-September is a reasonable time frame for a release.
So I guess the question is where, because that later in the process, it's mostly the question whether there are people available to test. And earlier in the process is where you care about developers being able to put time to develop the features or finish the pull requests that they have open. Yeah, good point.
All right, do we have any other feedback here?
I think let's continue, let's move on, and I will propose some dates on the HackMD, and we can discuss that again at the end of the meeting.
All right, thanks, Mike. I have some bullet points next. So my first bullet point is that we need, so we have some like read the docs metrics so that I was working on so that we can see what people are searching for on the Jupyter docs. So those doc metrics, we've manually downloaded the first trove and we're almost at the 90-day mark where we need another download. So that's one thing, is we need another download. The second thing is we need service accounts. So if somebody with access can make a service account and give access to that service account to the different subprojects so that we can automate this process, that would be great, so that we're not having to bug people to manually do this work. I don't have permission to a lot of the subprojects, so I'm going to be pinging the people on the original thread that I linked in the agenda. But if anybody has access to do this, we need this like service accounts to be made. But yeah, I cannot do it. And then for my second bullet point, I'm trying to figure out when I'm trying to define the source code for a function, like that's, so if let's say I define a function object in a cell. If I look at the __ code attribute of a function defined in the notebook cell, we're getting this like long number. It looks like a temp file with, it's like a bunch of numbers .py in a temp folder. Does anybody know where that number comes from?
You talking Python code?
Yeah, so if I look at under code, if I'm inspecting function objects from a notebook, it tells me that the path to the source is some temporary file with like a bunch of numbers.py. So I'm trying to figure out how can I tie that temporary file, that number.py, back into a Jupyter cell. I'm trying to figure out which Jupyter cell that comes from and find the source.
I mean, that's deep IPython magic. You know, you're rewriting under main. It needs to have a file, but without something like Jupyter LSP, which does a lot of shenanigans for it, or something like import NB, like you're you want to find the line of code in the notebook.
I want to find which cell it comes
notebook?
from, really. I'm trying to find which cell it comes from.
You don't. IPython doesn't know about cells.
Okay.
IPython, yeah, that's true. But to give more context, I think this logic and this file was created for the debugger mostly, because the debugger needs a file to be able to debug a cell. I think that's the reason why we have this in IPython now.
Yeah.
The number might just be a random number that I'm not sure. And the last information is normally with the debugger in JupyterLab, you should be able to go back to the cell that corresponds to this kind of files, temporary files, because there is some logic that checks the hash for a cell with a given content with the hash of that file. So it tries to map what cell the file refers to, just so that you are able to step into code. Yeah, that's how I remember the logic of the debugger back a few years ago, but
Okay, so
I don't think that has changed.
From the Python side, then I would probably need to connect to the front end and pull that information out that way, kind of essentially, right?
Can you say again what you're trying to achieve with these files?
So trying to, in Python, look at a function object and determine which cell that came from. It's a basic problem.
From a notebook itself.
Yes.
Running in a JupyterLab or from
Lab or notebook, yeah.
Lab or notebook, okay. Notebook 7 also should work the same way as JupyterLab. Yeah. So from the UI, I would expect that to still work. From Python code running a notebook, that is a little bit more involved, I would say. Yeah, I just saw in the chat something like having a bridge between the front end and the kernel with something like JupyterLab built on top of IPy widgets might work.
Yeah, I had looked at that. It seemed like it would be useful. I was poking around in IPy kernel, looking at how the history is stored when a shell execution request is sent. But yeah, I think, like you said, it doesn't seem like the connection is there necessarily. I can try to ping you later about that as well.
Yeah, sure.
Here is a question: should the messaging protocol include cell ID?
That would be cool.
It kind of does, but I mean, so we made that work on. You kind of do get it back. You get back. Yeah, it's in there. It's not normalized. It's in metadata, but I mean, like, I don't know. It's a lot. Because if you got the notebook back out, the notebook, unless you have import NB, would not be in a way, and even if it was an import NB, it wouldn't be the line number that you'd get back is concretely bound to a line in JSON. So like import MB actually works with the debugger, which is crazy, but it points you at a line of JSON because it's a line of JSON. Because you can populate the Python line cache.
In theory, I think if I know the cell, I should be able to, or rather, if I can tie it to an input, the in object, if I can tie it to the IPython in object, I think I can pull the source out of there, right?
Yeah, but the notebook isn't on disk yet. I mean, like, there's no guarantee that it actually is the real thing.
Yeah.
So, the CRDT ship rolls up on you, and now it is something, but that thing is also not guaranteed to be on disk. It's just in the consensual hallucination of the peers. So, you would for that to be accurate and not have a lot of sharp points at the edge of it, you would need to know what the client thinks of it. And I don't really know if the protocol would what would NB convert do with that data? What would things that aren't a live, non-strictly file format on disk? I mean, NB convert doesn't even know about files, right? It can't point you back at a place in the JSON. So you get back this notebook, but then you wouldn't know that it's code. Like, this is why we've had to do all the stuff for debug adapter protocol and LSP. You know, there's something about that magic high energy state of interactive computing that resists these traditional tools. So, I mean, you could make, I'll think about it. I don't think it's a great solution. I don't think we need to be adding that to the protocol unless we add it in a generalized manner that gives us lots of nice things. So, you know, if that, and not just Python, and, you know, accepts that there's other kinds of markup because people do that. So it's not saying I'm not saying it's impossible, just that I still respect the original decision for the kernel spec not to be strictly tied to a notebook. And when we have done things with cell IDs in kernels, it is peril fraught. Because you kind of need to make, like, it's actually cell order. The cell ID is not the actual identity of it. You can get confused. Once there's CRDT in there, it can get more confused. So I know. I think the JupyterLab thing and actually getting a contents manager on there would be the best hope, but then you'd still have to re-implement that for every language.
Mm-hmm.
If you create an output of what semantic kernels or what semantic names you are creating, we could get to that symbol table, which I don't know, Mike, did we put that in LSP? Is that in yet? You got outline? I don't know, whatever. Like, that could be that near point that is a Jupyter level concern. You know, I don't care what language you are, but did you define symbols? Let's go. You know, so that would be an argument for also wrapping LSP in a kernel COM thing, probably just widgets. But every time we add something else that is not something built on something we already have, it raises the risk of it only working in Zeus or only working in IPython kernel or you know, whatever.
Yeah, thanks for providing some of those solutions and insights, guys.
So I was looking at JupyterLab debugger at the same time. I can quickly show you what it looks like if you want.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Just to give a pointer. So let me see if I can. Yeah, let's see if I can find. No, I'm not sure if I can do it with my setup. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, I'm assuming you're seeing the, maybe not the correct one.
Yeah, I can see Jupyter.
I think that's the JupyterLab, right? Window.
Yeah.
This is just an example, you know, cell with currently the execution is stopped at a breakpoint. And here there is this button here that says open in the main area. It's a bit small, but this is the path to the temporary file. And if you click on this, it brings you back to the notebook.
Okay.
And there is some logic in the debugger extension in JupyterLab, which I think uses the notebook tracker, maybe the console tracker, some file editor trackers, and tries to compare each cell to see if there is a match, just so that you can do this jump. But this is all happening in the front end.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So that would be a place to look at if you want to check how it works. And It's using the murmur hash2 hash function to create a hash from the content of a cell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy. All right, that's all for me. Ely?
Yeah, hi everyone. I think about half of you already know what I have to say because there's significant overlap between the accessibility community and this community. But I'm here today to propose that we merge the accessibility meetings into this weekly front ends meeting. To be totally clear, this is not a proposal to merge the two sub-projects the way that Lab and Notebooks recently did. This is more following in the footsteps of the server and kernels meetings where it's still two distinct sub-projects who have enough overlap and I suppose little enough content that it makes sense to merge into one meeting for the benefit of both communities. So this would involve rebranding this call into a front ends and accessibility call, removing the existing accessibility call that happens every other Thursday. And also, while there is significant overlap, most of the folks who historically have been involved with accessibility work are already regulars at this call. To reduce the burden on anyone who that doesn't apply to, making it known that while accessibility would be a welcome topic at any of these weekly meetings, the first one of the month is when the members of the accessibility community would make a particular effort to join the call. And so that would be the best time to have any more in-depth discussions that need to happen. The accessibility group has frankly been sort of struggling with momentum. We're a very small group of contributors and there's a lot of work that needs to be done, a significant proportion of which is under the umbrella of front ends and in my opinion a lot of the most difficult work that needs to be done around accessibility falls under that front ends umbrella. And so I think it could be a really wonderful merging of sort of concerns. And I don't see it really taking a lot of additional time away from the front ends calls because there just aren't that many topics that have come up in accessibility calls recently. So I see this as sort of a pretty harmless thing to try, unlikely to cause a lot of disruption for this group. I could see a lot of benefit to having accessibility minded folks weighing in on work going on in front ends from the early stages of that work. Yeah, we have general consensus from the accessibility group that this would be something we'd like to try, but I'd love to hear from this group how folks feel about it. And yeah, any other questions?
I think it's a good idea. I was looking at the comments on the issue, and I think one comment was just about making sure that everybody in the accessibility group was okay with this, which it seems to be the case. And I guess the next step would just be to open an issue on the Team Compass, the frontend Team Compass, and then to me it doesn't sound like it sounds like a good idea. I'm pretty sure most people will agree with this, but maybe we should log it in an issue on Team Compass just for visibility.
Totally.
Yeah, that aligns very closely with also what happened with Notebook 7, and also since the accessibility work has some focus on Notebook 7, makes sense to try to, as you said, group the discussion in the same place at the same time.
All right, do we have any additional feedback here? Gabriel?
No, that's just a like, yay.
Okay,
emoji.
cool.
I'll create that issue on the Team Compass, and yeah, thanks all.
All right, is there anything anyone else wants to discuss while the recording's still running?
If we could come back to the topic of the 4.3 planning, and like I looked in the calendar, both proposed like provisional timeline with release of 9th of September, RC on 26th of August, and beta of 5th of August. So the beta indicates that we generally have the features that we want. And I think that it's fair because some of the features we deferred from 4.2 release, so like self-filtering or some overlay improvements. So it's not like they are not ready or they won't be ready. It's just that we needed more time to test them. And like 9th of September, following on the JSON's feedback, it would seem to me that even if someone is out in August, they would still have 1 week to raise any red flags, and then we could, of course, postpone the release if there are any blockers.
Could you mention the date again? In September?
Yeah,
9?
it's in the notes.
In
9th of
notes, okay.
September. Yeah, pasted in the chat as well.
Okay, so that means the usual feature freeze on August 5th or before, because usually we also have a
Yes.
timeline when we stop opening or at least consider PRs, right? Feature PRs. Would that be? Yeah. Okay.
So that's a good question. Should be the August the 5th, or should we do that slightly before we aim to release first beta? Like 29th of July.
No strong opinions on this, so I think for simplicity we could just say also August the 5th,
Okay.
if that's okay with everybody.
All right, brace yourselves. We'll go off the record here.